Hi, I'm Claudia St. I'm the president of Affinity HR Group. We are your HR partner and resource. So a few years back, I wrote a book on transforming teams. It's called Transforming Teams, Lessons in Building Collaboration and Restoring Trust. And in it, I wrote it for the purpose of those folks who are new to managing, are coming into the managing role. It is one of the hardest transitions I think one ever makes in their profession. And I also think that managing people is probably one of the most challenging things as professionals we ever have to do. The thought of trying to get another human being to do exactly what we want them to do, exactly how we want them to do it, is a big challenge. And so I put together these 10 tips, and these were tips that I learned over years, that I've learned in teaching and working with others, that my team put together. So these are just some thoughts for you to think about if you are evolving into your professional career and are now in a position where you're managing or supervising others. These are the sort of 10 nuggets that we recommend. The first is that when we become new managers, oftentimes when things get tough or clients are difficult or we face a challenge or a problem crops up, the tendency may be to throw others under the bus, to have somebody else get that blame. That is something that one should never do as a manager. If you throw your peers under the bus, whether they are your subordinates, your peers, or your supervisors, or your leaders, it creates this cancer within the organization, and it erodes trust externally and internally. So never throw your peers under the bus. Always be mindful that if we all take responsibility for our collective actions, we as an organization will really improve our relationships with our clients. The other is to think about the stories that you're telling yourself. Sometimes we witness a situation or we hear a story or something happens, and in our own minds, we start telling ourselves a story about that. We have this internal dialogue going on all the time. But the problem is when we tell ourselves a story about a situation, all we're doing is relying on our own interpretation, our own biases on that story. And so really there's no grounding, and perhaps what we're telling ourselves has no bearing in truth. So if you're telling yourself a story about a situation, about an encounter, stop, think about it, and make sure that you're not listening to your own internal story and that you're taking the time to ground that story in facts and in the perspectives of others. The third thing that we recommend for new managers is if you want to see a change, in the workplace, in the people that you manage, that change has to start with you. You want to see improved trust, you need to start trusting more. You want more communication, you need to communicate more. You want folks to feel comfortable and be more engaged, you need to be comfortable and be more engaged. So change starts with you. The other thing that we recommend for new managers is never to complain down. One of the hardest things, and probably the most tragic thing about becoming a new manager, is those people who used to be your peers are no longer your peers. The people you consider your friends are no longer your peers. So when something happens, a situation occurs, the tendency is to want to confide in, to complain to relate to the people that you know best. But the problem is, in your new role, you can't do that. And it really erodes morale, because if you think about it, if my supervisor thinks something is really bad, well, then it really must be very bad. And so it really does bring down the morale of your team. So one of the tragedies is keep your confidences to those who are your peers or those who are above you. Don't ever complain down. I'm actually looking at a list. I wrote this book. You would think that I would have all of this memorized, but it's 10 things, and I can't retain more than 2 or 3 things at a time. The other is feedback. As managers, we're really good at constructive feedback about time and attendance and attire and all sorts of things like that, but we don't spend enough time giving positive feedback. We recommend positive feedback first, final, and frequent. And what that means is when you see someone doing exactly what you asked them them to do, what you want them to do, stop, comment, let them know that you appreciate that they're doing exactly what you've asked of them. And then you're sure to see that behavior reinforced and happening again in the future. Spend most of your time giving positive feedback and save the corrective feedback for as little time as possible. And if you have to give corrective feedback, make sure that you bookend it with that positive feedback. Again, if you want to see change, you cannot change anyone but yourself. This is a tough lesson for new managers. We feel like we want to change others. If we see behaviors we don't like, we want to be able to change it. But the reality is we can only change ourselves. We know this in our relationships. We know this in our families. We need to know this in the workplace. It is your responsibility to communicate what you want and to make sure that your team have the resources to do and execute what it is you're asking of them. And it is your responsibility to give them feedback. But if after and despite all of those efforts, you're still not seeing what you want to see, that is on them. And you cannot change other people. At some point in time, you need to realize your job is to change yourself, and you cannot change others. Another important lesson for new managers is if you have a problem, if there's a situation that you can't quite figure out or you need help with, don't just come to those around you with the problem. Come with 3 solutions. This happened to me early in my career. My mentor, I would go to with problems and issues, and she would not even entertain any of the conversation unless I brought 3 solutions with me. It forced me into the exercise of taking ownership and taking responsibility for coming up with a solution. Now, she didn't always take my suggestions. Oftentimes she came up with something else, and that was fine. But I was invested with her in trying to find a solution. So for new managers, you do not need to solve everybody's problems. What you should do is start the exercise of making those who come to you with problems bring their solutions, 3 solutions when they have an issue, and then you can work through it. Another thing for managers to remember, to listen. I struggle with this because I talk all the time. I'm always trying to calm my inner voice and calm my impulse to talk so that I can stop and listen. When all you have is your own voice, you are missing out on the perspectives and probably the better solution that's out there, or even understanding what the root problem is to begin with. As a manager, spend more time listening. That will be your key to success, and your employees will feel heard, and that will improve engagement. So spend more time listening. The second to last nugget that we recommend is if there's a problem, if there's a challenge, if there's a conflict or a breakdown in trust, oftentimes we pay a lot of attention to what the actions were. Sue said this to me, and that really was wrong, and now I'm mad, and maybe that relationship is even broken. But stop and wonder, what was Sue's intention by saying that? What did she intend? Did she intend to hurt? Did she intend to disrupt or to cause conflict? Chances are she didn't. It was simply her action that caused that net result. And you can break through conflict and you can come to solutions and build trust much, much more quickly if you stop. You can unpack the action, absolutely, but then listen to what the intentions are. And if you focus on intentions, you will be able to build collaboration and restore trust much more quickly. My final nugget for you is, and this is the optimist's sort of credo, which is you're going to face problems. You definitely are going to have big problems. Some of them may seem insurmountable. But when you do, remember, the bigger the problem, the bigger the challenge, the bigger the opportunity for success and change and transformation. Nothing comes easy. And if we stick to the lane where we're not going to have problems or we're not going to have issues, then we don't change and we don't evolve. When you see those really difficult situations, rather than feeling paralyzed by them or trying to avoid them, embrace them, because when you do, chances are the transformation that results will be that much more meaningful. So those are my 10 tips for new managers. Again, they're in my book, Transforming Teams, Lessons for Building Collaboration and Restoring Trust. You can find it on Amazon or reach out to me. We hope this is helpful. If you like this type of content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, connect with me on LinkedIn, check out our website at affinityhrgroup.com, and email me if you have any thoughts or questions at contact@affinityhrgroup.com. That's about it for now. We hope that you're safe, we hope that you're happy, and we hope that you have a safe and productive work week. Take care.